Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, April is National Stress Awareness Month, and when dealing with ways to alleviate stress, laughter is no joke, but bumps. Seriously, though, there's a reason for the saying laughter is the best medicine. In fact, the Mayo Clinic actually says that laughter does not just lighten your load mentally, it actually induces physical changes to the body. It can soothe tension by stimulating circulation and aiding in muscle relaxation, and it can also stimulate organs that benefit from oxygen-rich air, which of course you take in when you're laughing. And those are just a couple of those physical changes. There are lots more, and I would strongly encourage people to take a look at some of the articles that have been written about how laughter can alleviate things like stress. Anyway, if you are a Milan-Berlin library card holder, you have access to thousands and thousands of different forms of media that will make you laugh, whether we're talking about comedic films or, as we'll be talking about today, stand-up comedy routines. And these routines are performed by some of the biggest names in comedy. The ones that we're going to talk about today are all available via our Hoopla Digital service, and they are available to you with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card entirely for free. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into the recs. Okay, so my first recommendation is from one of my all-time favorite comedians, and that is 1999's Eddie Izzard, Dress to Kill. I adore this routine. I have been watching it for, I guess, decades at this point. I cannot believe that this routine is over 20 years old. That is terrifying, one. But it's also hilarious, and the fact that it's 20 years old and isn't particularly dated is something really indicative of Izzard's approach to comedy. If you follow a lot of stand-up, much of the routines are frequently populated by current events, whatever is most talked about at the particular moment, and it's poked fun of to beat the band, whether we're talking about television talk show hosts or the news or whatever. Izzard practices what she calls universal comedy, or she tries to, and it's a big touchstone for her. And that means not hitting on, your latest headlines necessarily, but on concepts that are pretty universal. This particular routine is incredibly smart, but it also is really, really silly in a lot of ways. And that's what I kind of adore about it. It's intelligent and it doesn't dumb things down. And that's not what universal comedy is, certainly not to her, but it expects as much from the audience as she would hope the audience expects from her. So, you've got topics, and I'm looking at my little notes here. She talks about San Francisco, about squirrels, about American optimism, about Hitler, about the British royal family, about Stonehenge, about mass murderers. I mean, there's no topic that's off limits to her, but she presents it in a way that anybody could definitely understand, but without dumbing things down either. There's one of my favorite routines involves the Falkland Islands. To be perfectly honest, the first time I saw this, I had to look up where the Falkland Islands were. Because I was like, I think I know where they are, but I'm not really sure. And I hadn't had any prior knowledge about the history of the Falkland Islands. So it was kind of the piece of the routine where I was like, it was still really, really funny, just the way that Izzard presents the surrounding elements of the joke, but the context was missing. So I think that says quite a lot, that it was hilarious, even though I was missing all of that background context. If you do have the background context, it becomes 10 times funnier. So I think that just sort of indicates how skilled Izzard is about crafting a joke. Again, I had basic knowledge of the Falkland Islands, but nothing that was particularly nuanced. So I still got the joke that she was telling, even without all of the extra. And that goes for pretty much the rest of the routine. She does a bit about French. I do not speak particularly solid French. I still got all of the joke, and it was still incredibly funny. Whereas I do understand and have like a pretty robust knowledge of British royal family history and like the lineage and everything. So that joke in particular worked on multiple levels because I got all of the context and all of the bits and pieces in addition to the topics that she was just talking about on stage. Um, so that's the kind of layered, intelligent comedy we're seeing in the vast majority of Izzard's stand up. But I do think Dress to Kill is kind of my go-to anytime I want to introduce Izzard to friends or other people who are looking for great stand-up. This is the routine that I go for, and it just really is absolutely amazingly well put together. Like the whole routine is just so intelligent. You can find tons of other Izzard stand-up routines on Hoopla, but this is definitely the one that I would recommend checking out first. If you do happen to like the tone and you do happen to like the pace that she includes all of her jokes in. And it does, the nuance changes from routine to routine, but I will say that whole concept of universal comedy, where it's pretty basic concepts that work on multiple levels, regardless of your familiarity with them. This is definitely something that I feel like everybody should check out. So again, if you like the concept of universal comedy and you just want something smart and that will keep you engaged and laughing the whole way through, definitely check out Eddie Izzard, Dress to Kill. Okay, next recommendation is 2018's Jim Gaffigan, Noble Ape. Jim Gaffigan is one of those guys that it's just hard not to like him. He's so everyday Joe. There's something just really relatable about him, and that's kind of the nature of his comedy. He takes the most mundane of topics and makes them gut-bustingly hilarious. I mean, I grew up with thinking about Hot Pockets. If you don't know that routine, just look it up on YouTube because it's hilarious. But yeah, what I love about Noble Ape is that he really branches out as far as his comedy goes. So, like I said, he usually takes these concepts that we can deal with every single day, whether we're talking about Hot Pockets or what have you. But in Noble Ape, it gets really personal. One of the big themes that he revisits throughout the routine is his wife's battle with cancer. And it just feels really real because laughter, as we mentioned in the intro, is the best medicine, and he makes this terrifying subject really approachable, whether you're coming from it as someone who is living with cancer, is a cancer survivor, or you're one of those people who's on the other side, you're a loved one who has someone who is struggling with cancer or is a survivor as well. His humor is something that I think any of us can touch on and understand when facing that kind of terrifying foe, really. I mean, because it's cancer, you know? And he talks about all of these things that, you know, would surprise us. And in everyday life, you know, if you go into the doctor and they suddenly start describing cancer in relation to food, and that's what their comparative is, like, this tumor is the shape of a pear or the size of a pear or the size of a golf ball, and he talks about how those things really surprised him, but he does it in a way that makes you laugh, that sort of alleviates the tension, that, you know, makes you realize it's okay to try and find what little light you can in a situation like that. And of course, the entire routine is not about that particular struggle that he and his wife and his family went through, but it does color a large portion of Noble Ape. Besides that, you are just sort of dealing with the idea that these little bits and pieces of this father of many, many kids has to deal with in day-to-day life, and how he absolutely understands that he's ridiculous. Like, the things that happen to him are just everyday things, but he's able to look at them and present them in a way that makes you laugh and relate to them. He also is really, really skillful about playing with his vocal tone. Gaffigan has an interesting voice. It's a little higher and a little airier than a lot of other comedians, and he plays that up. He definitely knows how to pitch his voice to tell a story and to give you those highs and lows and to really push the punchline. And that's one of those things that you can tell a really brilliant comedian by his awareness of his own instrument, because of course the voice is definitely going to be a comedian's instrument, and he plays it to a T. He's just really, really brilliant. Again, Hot Pocket, that is a prime example of him playing with his voice. But he does it throughout Noble Ape as well. And he is self-deprecating in a way that is comfortable. So for me, sometimes the comedians that really make fun of themselves, it gets to the point where I feel a little bit of vicarious embarrassment when they talk about certain things. But with Gaffigan, it's not like that. It's just like, well, it is what it is. That, and his attitude is to just keep rolling, to just keep moving along, and there's this sort of balance between the self-awareness, the humor, and just the regular humanity of the situation that makes him so enjoyable to watch and listen to, and just, you really relate to him. You want to be friends with this guy. He's somebody who would be like a great conversationalist. So if you are looking for really relatable comedy that comes with an intense amount of skill, like technical skill with this guy is really impressive, definitely check out Jim Gaffigan, Noble Ape. It's available on Hoopla, as all of today's recommendations are, along with multiple other Gaffigan projects. Okay, final recommendation for today is 2020's Jimmy O Yang, Good Deal. I am such a big fan of Yang. He's absolutely hilarious, and I really, really love the topics that he touches on, and I'll get a little bit more on that in just a moment. So Jimmy O Yang is probably best known for his role in the HBO series Silicon Valley. He's very, very funny. He is one of those comedians who has incredibly smart comedy, and unlike the other two performers we talked about today, he does lean in quite a bit on current events, but he also really, really leans in to cultural elements. So Yang is originally from Hong Kong, but has been in the US forever, since he was a very young kid. And he really has this fascinating perspective of, all of these different sides. So he knows what it's like to be an immigrant. He knows what it's like to grow up with incredibly Asian traditionalist parents. And he knows what it is to be like a young person in today's America. So all of these elements mixed together bring out this really, really fun, really, really irreverent kind of humor. And I absolutely adore it on pretty much all of those levels. When I was a kid, there weren't very many Asian American comedians out. Like, it was, when I was little, we didn't even really have Michelle Cho doing a lot of her stand-up at that point. That was just, it just didn't exist. It really, really just didn't. So to have this representation today is absolutely amazing to me, and to be able to relate to it so well. That's what I really love. As mentioned, he does lean into current events quite a bit more than, say, Izzard or Gaffigan, but he then really spins it into how he relates to that event with being in this very specific culture. One of the routines that he does within Good Deal is about Hollywood's representation of Asians. In particular, talking about the movie with called The Great Wall with Matt Damon, who, if you don't know, is not Asian. So there's this movie about the Great Wall of China, and it stars Matt Damon. And there's this whole bit, and it's absolutely fascinating, but it's also super on point, and it's super relevant to the discussion of Hollywood and representation. And Young does that in a way that I think speaks to anyone who watches this, whether you come from the background of someone of a person of color, or if you don't, it's still really, really funny and still relatable. He also does a lot of comedy in pertaining to his father, who I guess has actively been in movies and sitcoms at this point, and Young includes that element in his comedy routine, but he also leans into the fact that his parents were pretty traditional, and how they raised him, and as someone who comes from a similar background, can very much relate to parents who push their kids in a certain manner. I still also relate in a way that it's just funny. Like, you just laugh because the things that he talks about are hilarious. They're also incredibly true and incredibly real from a cultural standpoint. So, the jokes work on multiple levels and are just really relevant no matter what time we're talking about. Because these are things that are going to be true for many of us from an Asian background today, and it's going to be true tomorrow. It was true yesterday. It's never going to change, which I really, really love. And that's one of those things that makes this kind of comedy absolutely hilarious. What's also great about it is I can show this comedy routine to anyone who doesn't come from my kind of background, and they will also find it funny just because it's hilarious. Like, some of the stuff he talks about, if you didn't have the experience, would sound unbelievably absurd, but still hilarious. But if you do come from the background, hilarious because it's absolutely true and absolutely translates over and over and over again. Anyway, if you are looking for something a little bit off the beaten path, with humor that works on both a multicultural level, but also a current events level, but also just a universal level, make sure you check out Jimmy O Yang's Good Deal. It is absolutely fabulous and hilarious. Okay, so those were my stand-up comedy routine recommendations for this week. If you have any recommendations for stand-up routines that you think you would like to share, please, please, please put those in the comments below. If you have any recommendations for future topics that you'd like us to cover, definitely comment with those. I'm always looking for help as far as themes go. As always, thank you so, so much for joining me. I love putting these little rec lists together for you, and this was especially fun because I hadn't delved into our stand-up catalog in a long time, and we've got some really fantastic offerings in there. So if these particular recommendations don't spark your interest, make sure you check out our catalog of stand-up routines, because something in there is definitely going to work for you. Again, as always, thank you for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye.